Hello, my dear mastermind. They don't admit it out loud, but every room you walk into feels it before you even greet anyone. That steady shift, that quiet pause that hits like the world just took a breath for a moment. That's the instant they realize you've already understood the whole situation before they even speak. People think intuition is some soft skill, but yours is a different creation entirely. It's not a guess. It's not a vibe. It's not some lucky feeling. It's a system you built through difficulty, heartbreak, disappointment, getting caught off guard, watching people switch when you least expected it, losing what you trusted, and rebuilding your instincts from the ground up. You didn't wake up with this. Life shaped you into this. And now it unsettles them, because you don't wait for evidence. You don't wait for their tone. You don't wait for their excuses. You read the air, the shift in their breathing, the hesitation in their eyes, the way they hold their words. You catch the meaning behind the meaning. You sense the plan inside the silence. And that's why they label you different. That's why they study you when they think you're not watching. That's why they whisper about how you always know things before they unfold. They don't understand the price you paid to gain this awareness. They don't understand the nights you stayed awake replaying conversations in your mind until patterns became obvious. Until your soul learned how to identify something untrue before it even formed. They don't understand how many times you trusted the wrong faces and had to carry the weight of that mistake quietly. They don't know that your intuition was born from wounds that healed into antennas. And now you walk around like you have some built-in radar. You're the one who sees intentions before actions. You're the one who hears truth inside the pauses. You're the one who feels energy before words. You're the one who stays quiet, listening to everything they're not saying. And it's confusing them because they don't know how you do it. They don't know how you catch the smallest shift, like it was a shout. They don't know how you see through their smiles like glass. You've become the person people avoid misleading, not because they're honest, but because your intuition reveals things instantly. And the wildest part? You don't even try. You just know. And now everyone's starting to call you exactly what you became. The one who understands. You ever notice how people act different around you before a single word leaves your mouth? Like the energy in the room adjusts first, and then they adjust with it. That's because your presence isn't just physical anymore. It's perceptive. It's observing. It's decoding. People can't hide their real intentions when someone like you steps in. Their energy spills before they can tighten the lid. Their motives show before they can polish their expression. And that unsettles them more than they'll ever admit, because they can fool everyone else with small talk, with surface-level emotions, with practiced smiles and half-hearted compliments. But they can't fool you. Not anymore. You've seen behind the curtains of too many people. You've witnessed how quickly a supposed supporter turns into someone working against you. The moment you start outgrowing the version of you they were comfortable with. You've watched how people suddenly become distant when you stop giving them the attention they relied on. You felt the shift when their words said one thing, but their spirit said something completely different. And now, your intuition catches that difference instantly. That's why some people can't look you in the eyes for too long. That's why they get tense when you fall silent. That's why they overshare details you didn't even ask for. Because your silence feels like a scan. Your presence feels like awareness. And your intuition feels like truth knocking the disguise out of their voice. You're not psychic. You're observant in a way that unsettles anyone who relies on confusion to guide their surroundings. You pay attention to the tone they use when they say your name. You catch the way someone's smile fades a little too fast when you mention your wins. You feel the tension they try to cover with jokes. You hear the envy they dress up as advice. You sense the disappointment they try to hide when your progress outshines their expectations. And that level of perception makes you the most unpredictable person in their story. Because they don't know what you know, but you know exactly what they're trying to hide. You see, intuition like yours doesn't grow in peace. It grows in situations that require awareness. It grows in rooms where you weren't safe to be trusting too quickly. It grows after experiences you weren't supposed to recover from. It grows after moments that forced you to develop vision on the back of your spirit. That's why your intuition feels different. It's built from experience, not mystery. It's shaped by moments that tried to break you, but didn't. And now, every step you take, every room you enter, every conversation you overhear, gets filtered through a mind that sees deeper than anyone else at the table. You walk around carrying a blueprint of people's real intentions while they're still trying to assemble their disguise. You're the one who knows, and that's why they worry about disappointing you even more than they worry about being exposed. You ever notice that small hesitation before they speak to you now? That flicker in their eyes, like they're searching for the right version of themselves to present? That hesitation is concern, not of you visually, but of being viewed clearly by you. Because your intuition doesn't read the surface, it reads the source. It catches the micro expressions they can't rehearse, the tone shifts they can't practice, the energy changes they can't hide. Most people think intuition is guesswork, but yours is a database, a living archive. Every disappointment trained it. Every shift in loyalty sharpened it. Every false smile, every hidden agenda, every moment of misalignment. Your intuition stored the pattern. And now, you move through life with an internal guide that identifies intention before action. People feel this. Even the ones who claim they don't believe in energy feel it instinctively. They don't understand why they get uneasy around you. They don't understand why their stories fall apart mid-sentence. They don't understand why their expressions feel heavier under your gaze. It's because your calm becomes a mirror, reflecting the truth they didn't want revealed. Your presence becomes a filter, showing the parts they hoped you'd never notice. And the most interesting part? You're not trying to unsettle anyone. You're just listening, deeply, quietly, intentionally. But people who hide pieces of themselves dislike being around someone who listens with their whole awareness. Because when you're near, every disguise gets heavy. Every hidden motive becomes visible. Every false layer starts to dissolve. And they begin revealing exactly who they've been trying not to be. Some avoid you. Some over-explain. Some mask their unease with humor. But all of them reveal the same thing. You see more than they wanted you to. That's the thing about someone who truly knows. Your intuition isn't loud. It's precise. It doesn't announce concerns. It recognizes patterns. It doesn't expose people. It remembers them. And it honors what it remembers. That's why you stopped handing out repeated chances. That's why you stopped overlooking obvious signals. That's why you feel the shift in someone long before they speak it. You've moved beyond believing words. You measure alignment. You read actions. You sense the subtle disconnects. You notice when someone's energy dips at your growth. You notice when their tone changes around your confidence. You notice when someone's unease slips through their laugh. This is why people call you the one who knows, because you navigate life like you're reading hidden notes in every moment. You hear what wasn't spoken. You feel what they tried to cover. You understand what they hoped you wouldn't detect. You're not imagining things, you're aware. And awareness is the ability they feared you'd develop. They still think you're responding to what comes out of their mouth. They don't realize you're responding to what shows itself in their presence, because you're not decoding their sentences. You're decoding their frequency. And frequency never lies. That's why some people act unsettled around you now. Their energy becomes uneven. Their voice shifts. Their confidence thins. Because they understand you're not reacting to the performance. You're sensing the truth. You're not focused on appearances. You're not moved by exaggerated confidence. You're not swayed by loud personalities. You're connected to something deeper, something intuitive, something older than words. You're tuned into intention, and intention is the one thing no one can polish, no matter how impressive they try to look. You've always felt this. That subtle pull in your chest when someone's story didn't align. That quiet tension that whispered, "Be mindful." That sudden heaviness when someone wanted something from you but didn't say it. You used to ignore it. You used to doubt yourself. You used to think you were being too cautious. Not anymore. Somewhere along the path, after the disappointments, the blind sides, the quiet lessons, you stopped dismissing your intuition. You began trusting it like a guide. You realized energy remembers what words try to forget. You realized patterns always repeat. And now you walk with a kind of clarity that sees intention long before behavior reveals it. You learn that people reveal themselves twice, first through their behavior, then through the moment they become uneasy because you noticed. And now you move through situations with an awareness most people never develop. You can feel when a compliment is really comparison. You can tell when support is actually observation. You can hear the difference between care and control. You can sense when someone's presence shifts at your progress. And the interesting part is, you don't challenge them about it. You don't need to. Your intuition isn't for conflict. It's for clarity. It's for direction. It's for keeping your spirit steady in a world full of mixed intentions. So you step back quietly. You adjust your access gracefully. You protect your inner space without making announcements. And this calm precision unsettles people because they don't know what your intuition caught. They don't know what your awareness concluded. They don't know what their own presence revealed to you without their words changing at all. That's why they behave unpredictably around you. That's why they speak differently. That's why they monitor your reactions like they're waiting for confirmation of something they can't explain. Your intuition lifts truth to the surface without you doing anything. People rarely worry about someone who speaks loudly. They worry about someone who pays attention. They worry about someone who observes without responding. They worry about someone who listens between the lines. And that's you. The one who sees the motive before the movement. The one who senses the shift before the explanation. The one who recognizes misalignment before it turns into a lesson. You didn't choose this ability. Life shaped it into you. And now it's the strongest force in every room you enter. Because when someone with perception like yours shows up, everything unclear becomes clear. You didn't intend to influence the room, but your awareness naturally reveals what doesn't belong. And some people feel that, even if they try to hide it. That's why conversation slows when you arrive. That's why people who are overly loud begin speaking softly. That's why even the ones who don't favor you maintain respect around you. It's not fear, it's recognition. Recognition that your intuition has never been off. Recognition that you sense what others miss. Recognition that you move from clarity instead of confusion. You step into the scene and the scene adjusts. Because your presence isn't noise, it's alignment. And alignment always influences whatever isn't steady. That's why certain people shift the moment you appear. They don't know how to manage someone whose presence feels like clarity standing in the doorway. They feel their confidence hesitate, their stories wobble, their smiles tighten, because your energy reads the room before you even sit down. You didn't choose this awareness. Life taught it to you. Every silent disappointment became part of your understanding. Every unexpected shift became part of your perception. And now you move with a sense of precision few people ever reach. You learn to sense the atmosphere the way others sense the temperature. You learn to read intention the way others read signs. You learn that silence often contains the entire explanation, and you've mastered that language quietly. That's why some people can't look at you directly, not because you're intense, but because you're accurate. You see through masks they thought were perfect. You hear the uncertainty behind their confidence. You feel the comparison they try to hide behind a smile. You notice the shift in their energy even when their words stay polished. You're not relying on guesswork. You're relying on experience, and experience refined you. Moments that were supposed to overwhelm you ended up sharpening you. Times you stood alone became the training that shaped your insight. That's why you don't need explanations now, because you recognize patterns. You trust your instincts. You follow the truth your awareness reveals. And people sense this the second you walk in. They sense that you're not influenced by noise. They sense that you don't respond out of insecurity. They sense that you're calm because you understand more than they realize. And that calm presence makes them adjust. It makes them reevaluate their tone. It makes them rethink their intentions. Because people may trust someone loud, but they always become careful around someone perceptive. Your quiet isn't empty, it's observant. Your silence isn't passive, it's intentional. And that intention shapes your entire environment. That's why opportunities align for you. That's why misleading situations fall apart before reaching you. That's why you often feel guided away from the wrong people and toward the right places. Your intuition isn't just protection, it's direction. You move with understanding instead of urgency. You move with purpose instead of panic, and life responds to that. So when people react strangely around you, let them. You're not supposed to be understood by those who haven't grown at your level. You're meant to influence the room without saying a word. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be aligned with the few who can meet you at your level. People who haven't grown like you will always misread your calm. They will think you're distant when you're focused. They will think you're uninterested when you're simply observing. They will think you're cold when you're protecting your peace. Let them. Your elevation isn't meant to fit their expectations. It's meant to reshape your path. And when you step fully into that truth, the room shifts before you speak. You're not supposed to move like everyone else. You're supposed to move with intention, with internal clarity, with an awareness that doesn't need noise to make a point. So when they react, overthink, whisper, or suddenly act careful around you, That's their spirit acknowledging your growth. They can feel it before they can explain it. They adjust because your presence highlights the difference between their noise and your direction. You don't blend in anymore. You redefine the atmosphere simply by being yourself. People treat you differently now because they finally understand who you are, not the version they created, not the version they assumed, the real one, the one who sees deeply, moves wisely, and listens with intention. You're not responding to their words, you're responding to their energy. You're not reacting to their behavior. You're recognizing their patterns. You're not impressed by loud gestures. You respect consistency. And that clarity makes people hesitate before speaking your name, because they know you no longer operate on surface-level assumptions. And that's why the truth travels with you now. Truth follows you, filters your environment, and reveals what doesn't match your frequency. You didn't force anything. You aligned yourself so steadily that anything not meant for you simply stepped out of the way. Their hidden intentions weren't revealed to harm you. They were revealed to free you from illusions, from mismatched energy, from connections built on uncertainty. Because the next chapter you're walking into is built on honesty, direction, and authentic presence. Only real energy can meet you there. Only aligned intentions can stay near you there. Only clarity can walk beside you there. Truth is clearing your path without you lifting a finger. You don't need to confront anyone. You don't need to decode anyone. You simply need to keep moving steadily, calmly, and purposefully. Let people react. Let them rethink. Let them adjust. Your direction is already set, because truth did the refining, clarity did the sorting, and you did the growing. Now all you have to do is continue forward. Every shift you made was intentional. Every moment of distance was alignment. Every quiet choice you made was growth. The ones who drifted were never meant to understand your evolution. They were meant to reveal what you no longer needed to carry. And now, you walk with a certainty that whispers louder than any explanation. You're not fragile. You're focused. You're not guarded. You're grounded. You're not avoiding anyone. You're honoring yourself, and people feel that shift the second you're near. That's why everything that once unsettled you now strengthens you. The people who changed on you were never part of your long path. The silent exits were direction, not loss. The uncomfortable transitions were guidance, not rejection. Nothing that left you took anything essential with it. You were being cleared, refined, upgraded. You weren't losing connections. You were losing interference. And now you're stepping into a version of yourself that moves with clarity instead of emotion. And that changes everything. You're not the same person they remember. Your glow is different. Your calm is deeper. Your silence carries understanding instead of confusion. People sense that your awareness has sharpened. They sense that you're not easily influenced anymore. They sense that your presence carries a level of stability they can't shake, and it makes them cautious, curious, even humbled, because you're no longer reacting, you're responding. You're no longer guessing, you're knowing. You're no longer tolerating, you're choosing. That's why they pause when you're near, why they watch without speaking, why they treat your presence with care. You carry wisdom now, the kind you only gain by living through things no one else saw. You carry insight, the kind that hears truth long before words form. You carry resilience, the kind that builds itself quietly until one day it becomes undeniable. They feel all of that, even if they don't understand it. Because once someone evolves the way you did, they don't return to who they were. They move forward with purpose, with peace, with clarity. And you have become that person. Hello, my dear masterminds. They started with curiosity, the kind they thought could be contained in notebooks and cold rooms. Every step you took, every glance, every pause was logged. They thought they were hunting a pattern. Instead, they were feeding it. Weeks turned to months, and the data began to behave like it had its own pulse. Conversation shifted when you walked in. Shadows lengthened without light moving, and pens broke mid-sentence when they tried to describe you. Their screens flickered at your name. Files corrupted when your image was attached. In their sterile halls, they whispered you were an anomaly. But the truth was worse. You were the variable that rewrote the equation. Even silence bent toward you. And somewhere in those endless hours of surveillance, one truth began to crawl beneath their skin. It wasn't they who were studying you. It was you who had been studying them all along. It started subtly, an itch they couldn't scratch. They'd replay footage of you 100 times, looking for cracks, for tells. But every frame only led them deeper into a maze you'd built without lifting a finger. The notes they took contradicted each other. The voices in their recordings warped, as if the air itself refused to cooperate. They began to notice dreams, identical ones, where your shadow stood in the doorway, saying nothing. The analysts stopped sleeping, then stopped speaking, as if your presence in their minds demanded silence. They locked your files in higher clearance vaults, but the locks failed. Codes changed overnight without human input. Someone in the control room swore your eyes followed them from a still image. By the time they realized the surveillance was watching them back, it was already too late. Your name had become a curse, and curses are never spoken. One of them tried to break protocol. Speak your name aloud during a midnight debrief. The lights flickered. The audio recorder faded. His own voice came back to him, distorted, whispering something he never said. He hasn't been seen since. The others pretend he was reassigned, but no one believes it. They now write your name only in fractured symbols, as if the act of spelling it could invite something into the room. The senior operative burned his files, but the ash floated upward instead of down, hanging in the air like black snow. Every meeting now begins with a pause, a shared glance, as though they're asking silently, do we dare? They dare not? And so your identity exists in the negative space, a shape made clearer by what they refuse to say. That silence grows heavier each day, pressing down until their own words feel like borrowed air. They started using code phrases instead, the variable, the anomaly, the shadow in the corner. But even those began to feel dangerous, like the syllables themselves were carrying static. One analyst swears she heard your laugh threaded through a white noise test pattern. Another claims his dreams now come with captions written in a handwriting identical to yours. These people believe in data, in patterns, in probabilities. And yet, when it comes to you, their graphs collapse into ink blots. The senior director once tried to present your case to a higher council, but the projector showed nothing, just a black screen, until the room smelled faintly of ozone and burnt paper. No one mentioned it again. They've learned that avoidance is a form of survival. Speaking your name is not just taboo, it's an invitation. And none of them are ready for what might answer. It's not just fear, it's reverence wrapped in panic. They've started walking wider circles around anything that even reminds them of you. An empty chair you once sat in is left untouched, as if the wood itself remembers your weight. Files with your traces are sealed in red envelopes marked "Do Not Open," not by order, but by instinct. They've seen too many colleagues vanish into obsession, chasing the question of what you really are. The whispers now carry a strange blend of awe and warning, like they're talking about a myth that walks. They know that whatever blueprint built you wasn't meant for their hands. And still, some of them can't stop glancing at the door, half dreading, half hoping you'll walk through it again. Smiling, that smile that unravels certainty. They tried to map you like a city, charting your streets, your hidden corners, your pulse. But every time they thought they'd found the center, the ground shifted, and their carefully drawn lines twisted into shapes they didn't recognize. Their data became riddles, their conclusions, contradictions. The most seasoned among them began avoiding the subject entirely, as if even thinking about you might invite something into their minds they couldn't expel. Some started referring to you with symbols, others with silence, never the name, because somewhere deep down, they realized the name isn't just identification, it's invocation. And in the wrong mouth, it's a door that doesn't close. They learned the hard way that names carry weight, and yours drags reality with it. Whispering it was like tapping on glass that holds back an ocean, harmless at first, until the cracks begin to spread. One night, a junior analyst whispered it under his breath while reading a report. Moments later, the lights flickered, his hands shook, and he tore the page apart like it was burning him. From then on, the order was silent and unanimous. Your name would never be spoken in full. Reports became vague. Conversations became coded. They started treating you not as a subject, but as a living anomaly, one that noticed when you noticed it. And still, they never stopped looking over their shoulders. Some of them tried replacing your name with symbols, an empty square, a black sun, a string of numbers no one could remember. But even the symbols began to feel heavy, as if they carried a shadow of your presence. The senior operatives banned personal contact altogether. Files about you were kept in sealed rooms lined with mirrors, so anyone entering would have to face themselves before facing your data. They thought this would dilute your effect. It didn't. Those mirrors became portals for nightmares agents waking up seeing their own reflection, standing beside their bed, whispering things they never told anyone. By the third month, the bravest of them refused to look at your file at all. They knew every attempt to define you only carved your outline deeper into their minds. Then came the silence. Not the kind born from peace, but the kind that presses on your chest like a weight, where even the air feels hesitant to move. Meetings shifted to hushed. Broken sentences, your name replaced by hand gestures, by eyes darting toward the door. They thought stripping language of you would strip you of power. Instead, it multiplied you. Without words, they had to feel you. And feelings have no locks, no clearance levels. The unspoken became a constant drum in their skulls. Each avoided syllable was another mile of chain they wrapped around themselves, thinking they were binding you. But in truth, they were binding themselves to you tighter, every day, every hour, until they realized the only thing more dangerous than speaking your name was trying not to. They began replacing your presence with code words, innocent phrases meant to camouflage their fear. But code has a way of unraveling, and soon even those phrases carried the weight of your shadow. Someone would say it at the wrong time, in the wrong tone, and the whole room would tense as if a ghost had entered. It wasn't your absence that haunted them. It was the certainty that you were still listening, still watching, still moving pieces in ways they couldn't trace. They'd glance at each other for confirmation, yet no one dared be the first to admit it. You had turned their own language into a minefield, every conversation a risk, and while they tiptoed through their sentences, you walked freely through their minds, a name unspoken yet louder than every word they feared to utter. In whispered meetings, they wrote your initials on scraps of paper instead of speaking them, as if ink could hide what breath might reveal. But the moment a hand scribbled those letters, the air would thicken, and eyes would dart to the corners of the room, searching for the unseen. You had become an uninvited guest in every council, your shadow stretching over every table. They stopped making decisions without first imagining your reaction, and in doing so, you were in the room without ever stepping inside. They called it avoiding risk, but the truth was simpler. They were trying to avoid you, and the cruel irony, the more they erased your name, the more powerful it became, like a storm whose silence only promises something far worse when it finally breaks. Some began calling you the variable, a nameless force they couldn't quantify. Others refused even that, settling for glances, tilts of the head, subtle codes that meant you. They thought this would strip you of presence, but instead it carved your silhouette deeper into their minds. Silence became your amplifier. The absence of your name turned into an unbroken echo, looping inside their skulls. Every failed plan was pinned to you. Every unexpected outcome whispered as you're doing. It didn't matter if you were involved. You had become the default explanation, the ghost in their machine. In their desperation, they stopped trying to outsmart you and began trying to predict you, not realizing that every prediction drew them further into your design. They built entire boards filled with red strings and photos, trying to map your motives. They circled dates, highlighted phrases, replayed moments when you let something slip, never realizing you'd planted those slips like breadcrumbs leading them to nowhere. Each thread they pulled only knotted tighter, turning their investigation into a web they couldn't escape. You didn't need to move a single piece. Their own obsession did the work for you. The silence around your name became a superstition, an unspoken rule, because every time someone dared to speak it aloud, something in their world broke a deal, fell through. An ally turned cold. A truth leaked that they couldn't contain. It was as if the mere vibration of your name summoned consequences they weren't ready to face. They started using code words instead, like frightened children, afraid of waking something ancient. Meetings shifted from boardrooms to whispered corridors, but even there, your shadow stretched over every table. They thought they were strategizing against you, yet every plan they made seemed to collapse before it began. Patterns emerged. Contracts evaporated. Allies withdrew. Technology failed. Each collapse timed too perfectly to be coincidence. The realization hit them slowly, like ice in the veins. It wasn't what you did that terrified them. It was what you could do without lifting a finger. And so they stopped speaking your name. Not as a tactical move, but as a prayer for survival. One by one, the analysts tore pages from their reports, burned files, erased recordings like erasing you from their reality could undo the damage. But the damage wasn't in the documents, it was inside them now, etched into their instincts. You had become a presence that didn't need an address, didn't need proof. The mere idea of you had weight, enough to bend their decisions, enough to twist their nights into endless rehearsals of questions they'd never ask. They'd seen power before brute force, political influence, money. But yours was something else. Yours was inevitable. And inevitability cannot be bargained with. It can only be feared and never named. In closed rooms with curtains drawn, they tried to speak of you in metaphors, calling you the storm, the shadow, the hinge on which everything turns. But even these substitutions made them uneasy, as if invoking your essence through riddles might still invite your gaze. It wasn't what you did that silenced them. It was the way you moved between their definitions, never fitting, always spilling over the edges of their categories. They prided themselves on understanding threats, labeling them, boxing them in. But you refused to be boxed. You weren't an enemy, or an ally, or a leader. You were a shift in the air, the moment before lightning, the pause before the avalanche. And deep down, they understood. To name you would be to summon you, and none of them were ready for that knock at the door. One tried, just once. His voice trembled halfway through your name, like his throat realized the danger before his mind did. The others froze, eyes darting to the corners of the room, waiting for something unseen to answer back. It was the kind of silence that has weight pressing on their lungs, slowing their pulse, making every second feel stolen. You had become an unspoken law in their circle. Discuss events, never origins, debate effects, never the source. You were the source, and that was a place they dared not look directly. They buried your name under euphemisms, but each time they tried to describe you, the air seemed to thin, as if the walls themselves leaned closer to listen. That's when the realization spread between them like wildfire. Your absence was an illusion. You were already in the room. Behind locked doors, they drafted reports pages upon pages, dissecting your patterns, your movements, your choices. They thought distance gave them safety, but the deeper they wrote, the more the ink pulsed into shapes they swore they hadn't drawn. Symbols, marks, warnings. One analyst swore he heard a faint tapping as he typed, perfectly in sync with his keystrokes, like someone was listening through his hands. Another refused to finish his section, after catching his own reflection smiling back, when his lips were still. And yet, every fragment they documented only seemed to point to a truth they could never fully print. You don't just leave footprints, you plant roots in minds. The longer they studied, the less they belonged to themselves. By the time the final draft was ready, they realized it was no longer theirs to submit. One by one, they tried to speak it, to test if the weight of your name was just superstition. But the moment their mouths shaped the first syllable, The air in the room shifted. Pens rolled off tables without touch. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows that didn't match their owners. The bravest among them laughed it off until he choked mid-word, as if an invisible hand had pressed against his throat. Silence flooded the space, thick and deliberate. That's when they understood. Your name wasn't sound. It was an invocation. A key that unlocked a door they had no business approaching. And you never told them to open it. You simply let their curiosity lead them there because you know some truths are sharper when discovered, not spoken. They shuffled their papers, avoiding eye contact, each pretending to be lost in harmless work. But their hands trembled, and the silence between them swelled into something suffocating. One finally whispered, "It's not safe," and the others nodded without question. They started speaking in coded phrases, replacing your name with titles. The variable, the anomaly, the one we can't model. But deep down, they knew it wasn't the sound of your name that scared them. It was the ripple it caused in the unseen, the way it bent the space between moments, as if reality itself leaned in to listen. They feared that if they spoke it again, they wouldn't just summon you. They'd summon everything that walks with you in the dark. And once that door opens, no one knows who walks out first. One by one, their confident voices turned to whispers, then whispers to silence. Reports stamped confidential gathered dust, locked in drawers. No one dared open. The bravest among them swore the data didn't add up. Every time they thought they had you figured out. The patterns collapsed into something older, stranger. They stopped calling you a person. Instead, they called you an event. They spoke of you as if you were a storm that knew exactly where to land, a shadow that could choose which light to swallow. And even in private, with doors bolted and blinds drawn, they hesitated. Because they'd learned the hard way, saying your name wasn't communication, it was an invitation. And every invitation is answered. They started tearing up the transcripts, burning the photographs, deleting files that once felt priceless. Not because the evidence wasn't valuable, because it was too valuable. The kind of truth that doesn't just change careers, it rewrites lives. One analyst swore the moment they printed your name, their lights flickered. Another claimed they heard a knock on their window. 12 stories up, nobody wanted to test the pattern twice. The smart ones didn't even try to warn the others. They just vanished from the project entirely. They told themselves it was caution. But deep down they knew it was surrender. And still, no matter how far they ran, the thought lingered. If they can't say your name without consequence, what happens when you say theirs? Some called it superstition. Others called it a security breach. But those who were there, they called it a curse. They remembered the day one of their own tried to speak your name in the briefing room, how his voice cracked, mid-syllable, like his throat had been cinched shut. He couldn't finish it. No one helped him. They all just stared, frozen, like witnesses to an execution they couldn't see. From that day forward, your name became a ghost in their system. A string of redacted letters, a gap in every sentence, a silence heavy enough to crush a man's will. They trained for threats. They trained for chaos, but they never trained for you. And by the time they realized it, they weren't running operations anymore. They were running from the shadow you left behind. They deleted your file not because they wanted to, but because they had to, every time they opened it. Strange things happened. Screens flickered, lights dimmed. Some swore they heard whispers, echoes through the speakers, a voice that wasn't theirs, a voice that knew them. Your picture once pinned to every wall was ripped down, shredded, burned. But even then, they couldn't get rid of you. You'd already etched yourself into their instincts, buried yourself in the reflexes of their fear. They'd walk into a room and glance over their shoulder without realizing. They'd hear footsteps where there were none. And in the silence between their thoughts, they knew you were still watching. It wasn't a file they destroyed. It was their own safety net. Now, their entire operation runs on avoidance. Meetings begin with, "Let's not talk about that." Eyes dart, hands fidget. They build plans around a ghost. Your ghost. The irony? They still think this silence will protect them. They don't realize that in refusing to speak your name, they've made it louder than ever. You've become a presence, not a person, a current humming under their skin, impossible to turn off. Even their dreams aren't safe. They wake up sweating, heart pounding, unable to remember what chased them, only that it smiled. And somewhere, you are smiling still, because you never needed them to say your name to own their minds. You needed them to fear the thought of it. Now, that fear is permanent.